All right, everyone. For several days, there are a lot of people within the legacy media, like the Fox News pundits and the CNN pundits, and basically every never-Trumper in the country. They were worried Trump is going to withdraw us from NATO because he's a Russian pawn. Oh my God, he's going to rip up all of our alliances. He's going to grandstand about money, and they'll abandon us. NATO will fall apart, and Russia will rule the world. How this actually happens, I don't know. You should be looking and being more concerned about China. That actually is acting more aggressive towards the West right now and has a much bigger economy and military. But no, it's all about those Russians, because we had to blame somebody for our shitty DNC leak because Obama '08 was our password and we thought that it was ironclad. Nobody could possibly get into it. No staff or whatever leak Podesta's emails in a huff at the fact that Bernie Sanders is being shafted by the DNC. But the fearmongers were totally wrong. Trump comes out and says, oh yeah, NATO's strong. I'm early optimistic. They've all said that they'll spend more on NATO for most of the states within NATO don't spend the amount that they are technically supposed to spend. Technically speaking, when he comes out and chastises them for not spending enough of their GDP on defense, he is correct, because they are supposed to already be doing that. Most of them don't. Some of them pay more. I think like Poland and some of the Baltic states and stuff, they've not only did they hit the mark, they've actually soared past it. They're investing heavily in defense. I think right now, maybe some Polish subscriber can tell me whether this is true. I've heard that Poland has like groups meeting up, like private militias, where they're training with weapons. Basically they're worried about Russia or any other intent. Maybe they're worried about Merkel eyeing their border, for the first time since the 1940s. I'm not surprised if you are. And so they're organizing, for self-defense purposes. By the way, having a bunch of partisan militia people is a really good tactic. Look, it worked for Switzerland for centuries. Why can't it work for a nation like Poland that's far larger and has much more manpower? Of course it can. It can't work in Western Europe, though, because, everyone's disarmed. It'd be very, very funny to see people in the UK attempt to take up arms, because I don't know that they would actually know how to use them at this point. So you'd have that one dude from the RAF trying to train his local militia before the Nazis come, and he'd be like, yeah, I'd throw up his hands and say, fuck it. It's not even, there's no point to this. NATO is not going anywhere. The fact that Trump brings up the specter of, oh my God, Germany has to pay a little bit more money into NATO so the US doesn't have to keep paying so much. What's wrong with that? It's part of the agreement anyway. You're supposed to pull your weight. It doesn't mean that the alliance falls apart, because you've got to understand, for these countries, what other alliance are they going to strike? What other alliance are they going to form? If it doesn't involve the United States, it's not a credible deterrent to Russia. What, the UK is not playing nice with the EU anymore either. So, in other words, you're going to say Merkel, with the German military, which has excellent technology, generally speaking, admittedly so. You get the Leopard tank and everything. And then you got French nukes. That's still a secondary power on the world stage. It doesn't have enough manpower. It doesn't have enough nuclear power. It doesn't have enough actually trained individuals. Merkel keeps trying to form this European military. Good fucking luck. It's going to be a bunch of Polish people and Hungarians who know how to actually use weapons. They're going to be the ones that sign up. They're also going to want the pay of being, EU soldiers, because probably more than the average income in their countries. What person in Germany is going to want to serve? No, they would rather carry broomsticks around when they're training. It's not a credible deterrent. NATO is number one. It's the strongest military alliance in the world. It's the modern Delian League. And it's simply not going to go anywhere. When people, the fearmonger, and they say Trump is going to disgrace our allies, like, wasn't it Tusk came out, I think it was Tusk, from the EU. It's like, well, you should be kind to your allies because you don't have that many. You gotta be fucking joking me. You gotta be fucking kidding. That's not true whatsoever. The United States main alliance of NATO is not the only major web of alliances that we have. You do realize that there's a reciprocal defense treaty with half of the Latin American states, right? And half of East Asia, right? That we're allied with multiple Middle Eastern and African nations too, right? How many allies in a military sense does Germany have? How many does Belgium have? No, they're stuck in Europe and they're sheltered by the United States. Europe has failed to create another pole of power in the world. It is still secondary. In that sense, you're like Russia. You're not like the US and China. That's the bipolar world. You've got two main powers, the US with its expansive web of alliances, and China, which is quickly rising, although it looks like it's going to stagnate and burn. That's honestly what I think in the next 10 years. Second to that, you have Europe, which is on the skids, having massive internal problems, and Russia, which is a rust bucket. It is a former great power. It is formerly the number 2, tied basically for first place with the US in the world. But that's former. The USSR does not exist. When people are saying, Russia's going to interfere with every election, Russia's going to nuke us all, Putin controls the US president and the Hungarian president and the Brexiteers and everything. How many things does Putin control? It looks like the Russians won, I guess, the Cold War then. Yeah, it looks like they won. See, we might as well just all start speaking in a Moscow dialect at some point, because clearly they've done something right if they've accomplished all that. No, that's bullshit. It's total bullshit. Russia couldn't even hold a candle against a European military, even if it does lack a credible deterrent. It's not going to happen. NATO is going to keep being in force. You're more likely to see the dissolution, further dissolution anyway, of parts of the Latin American alliances that we've built based on, the fact that the populists in all these countries have difficulty getting along. But have you seen what Mexico is now doing? Mexico, with a government that's supposedly is going to go hardline left and nativist, internally, and say flood the border. They're building a fence on their southern border to help, prevent future problems with migration into Mexico. That is, there are parts of Mexico that are actually astonishingly developed. When people complain about Mexico being a hellhole, they're talking mainly about the Yucatan and some of the slums of Mexico City predominantly. Not talking about the Monterrey area. No, that's basically second world. It's, it's sort of like maybe the better parts of Eastern Europe. That's basically what you're talking about. It's better than some parts of the United States that have been blighted by the drug war. No, NATO is staying. Trump is not going to rip NATO apart. He's coming out saying, well, they've already pledged to pull their weight, these other countries that are members. Some of them are already doing so. So why would we be concerned? Look, if someone's not pulling their weight continuously, cut them out of NATO. The other countries, Eastern Europe especially, is much more on board, I think, with increasing defense spending. And how is this sort of posturing, by the way, signs that he's like a Russian pawn or something? You're strengthening the states that are along the Russian border or near to it. They're getting stronger. NATO, as a result, is getting stronger. When you take stress off the U.S. and our economy grows, because we can pay for other things. And when job creation is up, when the stock market is up, when everything is up here, we become stronger. It makes it much harder for other countries to bully around any Western nation because we have more power. You have more diplomatic power if you have a massive economy and a good military and things are growing. And everyone's confident and everyone's like, yeah, waving the flag and stuff. Morale has something to do with it as well. One part of NATO that doesn't have high morale, I think at this point, is Germany. And the UK at the moment has some problems there as well. It's interesting to see. But I don't sit there worrying that Trump is going to tear NATO apart. The fact that he kept us out of the TPP is a good thing. There were people, some of these firms, like a Salon or something, they complained about it, and they're like, Obama's making a mistake pushing this issue. The second Trump is elected, they're like, oh my God, they freak out, and they say, he's handing the reins of world trade to China by not striking this deal that we ourselves criticized over and over for 2 fucking years. How very, very strange that is. They never worried about Obama pissing off our allies. I would think some of the actions we took as world police then were worse, like getting involved in Libya, trying to prop up the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, overseeing the Syrian civil war. You know how many Europeans we probably pissed off by creating that problem in part in the first place? Quite a few. Must be millions of people. That's about all. Peace out.